You're here for the insights, right? The stuff
Mm.
that makes you think. Well, you've definitely come to the right place today.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing a deep dive into, well, a really fascinating Capstone project. It's from a Google Gen AI course.
Yeah, and it's tackling some pretty heavy topics, relationship analysis, even harassment detection, all using AI.
Exactly. And this isn't just theory, is it? We've got details on an actual project,
That's right, it's tangible, something they actually built and presumably got working, not just a paper exercise.
which makes it way more interesting, I think. So
Okay.
our mission here is to pull out the most insightful bits for you.
Yep. Cut through the jargon, give you a clear sense of what this thing can do, the tech behind it, without getting bogged down.
Right. Let's dive in. What's the first piece?
Okay, so the project has two main parts. First up is a mobile app. It's called LoveSignal AI.
LoveSignal AI.
Yeah.
Okay, the name alone is intriguing. What's the core idea there?
It's an Android app,
Yeah.
and the goal is basically to analyze conversations,
Hmm.
both spoken and written text.
Analyze them for what
Yep. To
exactly?
spot signs of romantic interest,
Yeah.
and also just to understand the general dynamics happening in a relationship. It's meant to give users like AI-powered insights.
Wow. So like an AI wingman almost,
Yeah.
trying to read between the lines for you.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
It analyzes the text, looking for those, subtle indicators, word choice, phrasing, overall sentiment.
Things we might pick up on intuitively, but maybe not always consciously.
Exactly. And it also looks at broader patterns in the relationship, trying to give a deeper picture. They even had like a picture of the app interface in the docs, right?
Yeah, I saw that. It showed a conversation broken down, highlighted positive, negative, neutral stuff.
Hmm.
But the really interesting part was the little flags
Hmm.
where it thought it detected romantic interest. Seeing that visually, it makes it real.
Totally. It's not just basic sentiment. It's aiming for something more specific, those little sparks.
Okay, fascinating. So that's Love Signal AI.
Yeah.
What's the second big component? You said it was quite different.
Yeah, very different focus. It's a web platform called Harassment AI Judgment.
Harassment AI judgment. Okay, sounds serious. Tell us about that one.
This platform is specifically designed to detect harassment, but only in Japanese text.
Japanese. Interesting. Why Japanese specifically? Or did they say?
They didn't explicitly say why Japanese, but it highlights that NLP, natural language processing, is very language dependent. You need models trained for that language's nuances, slang, cultural context, everything.
Right, of course. So its purpose is just automatic detection.
Pretty much. Identify and flag content that could be harassing, trying to address harmful online stuff.
So a real contrast from analyzing romance to detecting harassment, using similar underlying tech, presumably.
Fundamentally, yes, it shows the range. AI applied to understand complex social issues, both positive and negative.
Okay, let's dig into the harassment detection side a bit more. How does that workflow actually function? They laid it out, right?
They did. So the main idea is a user gives it some Japanese text. The system then needs to classify if that text is harassment or not.
Okay, so user submits text, then what? Step by step.
Right, first, the system kicks off a content analysis using AI models trained specifically on Japanese harassment patterns.
Got it. Trained models.
Then, the crucial bit, the AI model flags it if it thinks there's potential harassment.
And it doesn't just stop there.
No, it then presents the results back to the user, and importantly, it can apparently provide supporting evidence like highlighting the specific words or phrases that triggered the flag.
So it's not just a black box. It tries to show its work, so to speak.
Exactly, it tries to offer some transparency.
What's running this whole thing? You mentioned Google Cloud Platform.
Yeah, it leans heavily on GCP services, specifically things like Cloud Functions, the Natural Language API, and Cloud Firestore.
Okay, let's quickly unpack those. What does each one do?
Sure. Cloud Functions is kind of the orchestrator. It handles the API requests when the user submits text and manages the whole analysis flow.
The traffic cop, basically.
Kinda, yeah.
Okay.
But then the Natural Language API. That's where the real text analysis magic happens. Sentiment, identifying people or places mentioned, all that linguistic stuff needed to spot harassment.
Right, the core brain for language understanding. And Cloud Firestore.
That's the database. It's
Yeah.
where the results of the analysis, the flags, the evidence, all that data gets stored.
Okay, so a neat little ecosystem of tools working together.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's pivot back to the relationship side. The LoveSignal AI.
Mm.
They also talk about building the actual analysis pipeline for that, right?
Mm.
How did that process work?
Yeah, the relationship analysis pipeline. The big goal there is obviously to take text data and pull out useful relationship insights.
And it starts, I guess, with just getting the data in.
Exactly. Stage one is data ingestion and setup, just receiving the text, getting it ready for analysis.
Standard data stuff. Then what?
Then you've got environmental setup and package installation, basically making sure all the software tools and libraries the code needs are installed and ready to go.
Setting up the workshop.
Pretty much. After that, API key setup and library imports. This means setting up secure access to services like that natural language API.
Right. You need the keys to the kingdom.
You do. And importing the code libraries chunks of pre-written code that handle common tasks, like making web requests or dealing with data formats.
Okay, so foundation's laid. What are the more analysis-focused steps?
This is where it gets more granular. They talk about defining workflow node functions. Think of these as small, specialized processing units. Each one does a single specific task.
Like little workers on an assembly line.
That's a great analogy. And then you define the workflow node connections. That's basically drawing the lines on the assembly line map, showing how data moves from one worker or node to the next, the sequence of operations.
So it's modular. You build these specific task units and then link them up.
Precisely. It makes the whole thing more manageable and flexible.
They went into detail on some of these nodes, didn't they? Can you give us some examples? What kind of tasks are these nodes doing?
Sure. So node 1 is called extract existing relation tuple text. Its job is basically to find mentions of relationships that are already stated in the text.
Like if someone writes, my girlfriend or his brother.
Exactly. It pulls out those explicitly named relationships, just identifying the known connections.
Okay, straightforward enough. What's another one?
A really interesting one is node 2, image analysis. Analyze image. This suggests it's not just text.
Wait, image analysis, how does that relate to relationships?
Well, the idea is using some kind of analyze image function. It could look at pictures shared in the conversation, maybe, and extract clues like how close people are standing.
Proximity?
Yeah, proximity, eye contact, even facial expressions, trying to get relationship cues from visuals.
Whoa, okay. That adds a whole other layer, so it's multimodal, potentially.
Potentially, yeah. Then there's node 3, generate sentiment guidance, text. This takes the basic sentiment scores positive, negative, neutral, and turns them into actual guidance or insights about the emotional tone.
So instead of just saying 70% positive, it might say something like,
Maybe like the overall tone seems supportive, or there are frequent expressions of negativity that might indicate tension, something more interpretive.
gotcha, making the data more human readable. What about storing the findings?
That's node 4, save report. Save report. Pretty self-explanatory. It formats all the analysis results, maybe adds timestamps and saves it, likely as structured data like JSON.
Creates the official record of the analysis. Any other cool notes?
Node 5 is check for relationship stages, analyze text. This one tries to figure out where the relationship is based on the language.
How so? Like early dating versus long-term?
Yeah, things like that. Is it newly acquainted, deeply in love, maybe signs of potential conflict? It's inferring the status from communication patterns.
That's pretty sophisticated inference.
It is. Then node 6, generate concise detailed report, which bundles everything up, text insights, maybe image insights, into either a quick summary or a full detailed report for the user.
Offering different levels of detail. Makes sense.
And node 7 is world knowledge integration, text. This sounds ambitious.
World knowledge, like common sense.
Kind of. It suggests incorporating external knowledge, common sense, about how relationships work, social norms, typical milestones to make the analysis richer and more context-aware.
Wow, so it's not just analyzing the words in isolation, but relating them to how the world generally works.
That seems to be the idea. And finally, node 8 is workflow branching decision. This allows the analysis to split off onto different paths depending on what it finds.
So if it detects strong negative sentiment, it might trigger a different set of follow-up analyses than if the sentiment was neutral.
Exactly. It makes the pipeline adaptive, more intelligent in how it processes the information based on intermediate results.
That whole node structure sounds really powerful, but Also complex to set up.
Definitely. It requires careful design.
You mentioned API keys and libraries earlier. Just to double-click on that, why are they so vital here?
They're absolutely fundamental. The API keys are the secure credentials needed to use external services like Google's natural language API. Without the key, no access.
Right, the digital handshake.
And the libraries like requests in Python for web stuff or JSON for handling data, they provide ready-made tools. Developers don't have to reinvent the wheel for basic tasks. They build on top of these established, reliable components.
Gives a ton of time and effort, I imagine.
Huge amounts. It lets them focus on the unique logic of their application.
And the benefit of defining those node functions as separate modules. You said it helps manage complexity.
Yeah, big time. It makes the code way cleaner, easier to read, and easier to test. Each function does one thing well. Plus, you can potentially reuse those modules elsewhere.
Divide and conquer. And the connections between them, that's what direct the data flow.
Precisely. The connections define the sequence. Output of node A goes into node B, then node C, ensuring everything happens in the right order with the right information. It's the roadmap for the data.
Like a recipe where steps have to happen in sequence.
Good analogy.
Okay, and there was also a mention of a utility function specifically for handling JSON responses.
Right. APIs often send back data in this structured format called JSON. That utility function is just a helper tool designed to pull out the specific bits of information needed from that JSON structure for the next step in the analysis.
Data extraction, basically. Tidying up the info received from the API.
Exactly. And those branching functions we mentioned, they contain the actual logic for making decisions within the workflow.
The if this, then go there logic.
Yep. If sentiment is highly negative, activate conflict analysis node, else proceed to relationship stage analysis. That kind of conditional logic makes the pipeline dynamic.
Super interesting. Now, visualizing all this, they used a DAG, a directed acyclic graph. Sounds technical, but the picture helped.
It does sound technical, but the concept is simple. It's just a flowchart, really. Each node is a box, and the arrays show how data flows between them. Directed means the arrows have direction, and acyclic means there are no loops, data flows forward.
So it's just a visual map of that whole assembly line process we talked about.
Exactly. And seeing it visually makes it much easier to grasp the structure, the dependencies, how everything connects compared to just reading code.
Yeah, that graph diagram was definitely helpful. And they showed an output example too, right? A bar chart.
They did. A sentiment composite analysis report bar chart showing the breakdown of positive, negative, and neutral scores for some analyzed text.
So a concrete example of the kind of insight you might get at the end of the pipeline. Visualized data.
Precisely. Turning raw analysis into something easily digestible.
Okay, so pulling all this together, what were the key takeaways or observations the project highlighted from all this analysis capability?
Right, the key findings. First one they noted was that sentiment is multifaceted.
Meaning it's not just good or bad.
Exactly, it goes deeper. They talked about capturing the intensity of the feeling, not just the type, and potentially even specific emotions like joy or anger, not just general positivity or negativity, much more nuanced.
Capturing the richness of human emotion better. Makes sense. What else?
Another big one was spotting potential communication breakdown.
How would it spot that?
By looking for patterns, like persistent negativity, maybe one person disengaging, conflicting statements, things that often signal problems and how people are communicating in a relationship.
So using the data to flag potential relationship friction points, that could be quite impactful.
Potentially, yeah. Then there was the idea of relationship benchmarking.
Benchmarking, like comparing your relationship to others.
Sort of. The idea was maybe comparing the dynamics, say, the level of positive sentiment in your conversation data against aggregated data from many other relationships, maybe at a similar stage.
That's interesting. Gives you context, maybe. Are we arguing more or less than average kind of thing?
That seems to be the concept, though obviously big privacy questions there about how you'd collect and use that aggregate data ethically.
For sure. Huge ethical considerations. What was next?
Inferring the current relationship status. Based on all the patterns, sentiment, topics, interaction style, the AI tries to estimate the overall state. Is it healthy? Struggling? Just starting?
Like a data-driven relationship health check.
Kind of. And, of course, central to LoveSignal AI, identifying detected romantic signals. Those specific linguistic cues or sentiment patterns that suggest romantic interest.
The core function of that app, spotting the sparks.
Yep. Another subtle one was uncovering expressed and implied expectations.
Implied expectations. How?
Well, beyond what people explicitly state they want, The analysis might infer underlying assumptions or needs based on phrasing, complaints, or even positive expressions, trying to read between the lines for those unspoken rules or desires.
That's deep. Unspoken expectations are often where relationships hit snags.
They really are. And related to that, detecting patterns of negativity, not just isolated negative comments, but recurring cycles or themes of negativity that could be damaging.
Spotting toxic patterns, maybe.
Potentially. And finally, circling back to the other platform, they re-emphasized the harassment detection for Japanese text, identifying that harmful content.
Right. So it's this dual focus, understanding positive connection and identifying negative, harmful interaction.
Exactly. A really broad scope for applying AI to communication.
Okay, stepping back from the specifics,
Mhm.
what are the bigger implications here? What's the potential future for this kind of AI?
Well, the potential to get more, let's say, objective analysis of our interactions is pretty significant. Tools that help us understand our own relationships better, maybe. Platforms that automatically filter abuse.
Yeah, you can see the appeal.
Future directions could involve adding more data types, like analyzing tone of voice from audio or body language from video. Imagine how much richer the analysis could be.
Definitely more data points.
Plus, improving accuracy, expanding to more languages beyond English and Japanese, getting better at understanding really subtle sarcasm or cultural nuances.
But they have to be challenges, right? Limitations.
Oh, absolutely. Human relationships are incredibly complex, messy, context dependent. AI is just looking at the data provided. It can miss subtext, history, inside
It's
jokes.
the stuff that isn't explicitly in the words or images.
Exactly. And there's always the risk of bias in the AI models, learned from the data they were trained on. Plus, the ethical tightrope of using AI for relationship advice or judging harassment, it's tricky.
So it's a tool, not a replacement for human judgment or understanding.
That's the key message, I think. It can augment understanding, provide insights, maybe flag things we miss, but it's not the whole picture. Human context is vital.
So why does a project like this matter then? What's the significance?
I think it's a powerful example of applying AI to really complex, nuanced areas of human life, our social and emotional connections.
Pushing the boundaries beyond just, say, recommending products.
Right. And the combination here is interesting. A mobile app for personal relationship insight and a web platform for social moderation, tackling both positive and negative communication dynamics. It's innovative.
Okay, so to wrap this deep dive up for you, the listener,
Mhm.
we've really unpacked quite a bit here. We looked at this Google Gen AI Capstone project with its two main parts. LoveSignal AI for analyzing relationships.
And the harassment AI judgment platform focused on identifying harmful Japanese text.
We saw how it uses Google Cloud tools and a pretty sophisticated pipeline with all those different analysis nodes, sentiment, images, relationship stages.
Yeah, tackling everything from data ingestion to generating detailed reports and even trying to incorporate world knowledge.
And we touched on those key observations,
Hmm.
sentiment being multifaceted, spotting communication issues, benchmarking, detecting romance or negativity.
And of course, the harassment detection piece. It really shows the sheer complexity involved in trying to get AI to understand human communication.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's not simple. So as a final thought to leave you with, thinking about all these capabilities, AI, analyzing our relationships, detecting harassment, what are the most significant ethical questions or societal shifts that come to your mind? Where should the boundaries be as this tech keeps evolving?
Yeah. What does it mean when algorithms start interpreting the nuances of our connections? Lots to think about there.